Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, looked at the clock, and thought something was wrong with you? Maybe you try to force yourself back to sleep. Maybe you reach for your phone. Maybe you start worrying that you're not getting enough rest for tomorrow. But what if waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a sleep disorder at all? What if, hundreds of years ago, it was simply how almost everyone slept? Tonight, you'll discover why millions of people in medieval Europe slept twice every night, what they did during the quiet hours between those two sleeps, and why your own body may still remember a rhythm that modern life has almost completely erased. Imagine you are living in medieval Europe. There is no electricity, no glowing windows, no television, no internet. When the sun begins to disappear behind the hills, your day also begins to end. Darkness arrives quickly. Without electric lights, the entire village changes. Families gather around the small fire. The smell of wood smoke fills the room. Candles burn slowly because they are expensive. Every flame must be used carefully. Outside, narrow dirt roads become almost invisible. Only the moon and the stars light the landscape. The village becomes quieter with every passing hour. Most people cannot afford to waste candles simply to stay awake. Instead, they finish their evening meal, say their prayers, and prepare for bed. You climb onto a simple bed stuffed with straw, dried grass, or rough wool. Your blanket is thick but scratchy. The room is cold during winter and surprisingly crowded throughout the year. Parents, children, grandparents, and sometimes even servants sleep under the same roof. Privacy is rare. Silence is almost impossible. You close your eyes. This is what people would later call the first sleep. For the next 3 or 4 hours, your body rests deeply. The village outside remains peaceful. The only sounds are distant dogs barking, the wind moving through the trees, the occasional howl of an owl, and the soft crackling of a dying fire. Then, something unexpected happens. Your eyes slowly open. No alarm has rung, nobody has shaken your shoulder. You simply wake up. The fire has almost gone out. The moon is still high in the sky. Everyone around you is beginning to stir, and strangely, no one seems surprised. Because this isn't an accident, this is part of the night's routine. For the next hour or sometimes even two, you remain awake. You don't lie in bed wondering why you can't sleep. You don't count the hours until morning. You don't think something is wrong with your health. To you, this quiet period feels completely natural. Some people kneel beside their beds to pray. Many believe these peaceful hours were the best time to speak with God because the world was silent and free from distractions. Others quietly add more wood to the fireplace before the room becomes too cold. Farmers step outside to check their horses, sheep, chickens, or cows. A strange noise during the night could mean a hungry wolf, a thief, or an animal escaping its pen. Women often continue spinning wool, repairing clothing, or preparing work for the following day. Some craftsmen sharpen their tools. Others simply sit beside the fire thinking about tomorrow. If someone in the family is sick, this becomes the perfect time to care for them without interrupting the day's work. Those fortunate enough to own books may spend a few quiet moments reading religious texts. Reading by candlelight is expensive, so every page must be worth the cost of the flame. Even conversations happen during this time. Family members quietly talk about harvests, weather, marriages, or village news while the rest of the world sleeps. For married couples, these peaceful hours often held another purpose. After several hours of deep rest, many believe the body had regained enough energy for intimacy. Some historical writers even suggested that this was one of the healthiest times for husbands and wives to be together. The night was never simply one long sleep. It was divided into two peaceful chapters. One chapter for resting, one chapter for living quietly. Eventually, your eyelids begin to feel heavy again. The fire burns lower. The village falls silent once more. You return to bed. This begins your second sleep. Once again, you drift into dreams. Hours later, the first rays of sunlight appear over the fields. Roosters begin crowing. Church bells ring across the village. Another day of farming, cooking, trading, or hard labor is about to begin. To you, this entire routine feels perfectly ordinary. No one calls it unusual. No one thinks it deserves a special explanation. People simply speak of the first sleep and the second sleep because everyone already understands what those words mean. This habit was so common that medieval writers rarely bothered to explain it. It appeared naturally in letters, medical writings, religious texts, poems, and even court records. The two sleeps were simply part of everyday life. So, why did people sleep this way? The answer wasn't magic, it wasn't medicine, it was their environment. Without electricity, human life followed the movement of the sun. Winter nights could last 14 hours or even longer in some parts of Europe. Trying to remain asleep for that entire time wasn't easy. Instead, your body naturally separated the night into two periods of sleep with a calm period of wakefulness between them. Modern science has produced some fascinating evidence that supports this idea. In experiments where volunteers lived for several weeks without artificial light, many gradually developed a pattern that looked surprisingly familiar. They slept for several hours, woke naturally in the middle of the night, stayed peacefully awake, then fell asleep again without difficulty. Researchers believe this may reflect an ancient rhythm that humans followed for thousands of years before electric lighting transformed the night. Of course, medieval Europe was a large and diverse place. Not everyone experienced exactly the same routine. Monks often woke for scheduled midnight prayers. Night watchmen remained awake protecting towns. Soldiers guarded castle walls. Travelers sometimes walked beneath the moon to avoid the heat of the day. Merchants arriving late might continue their journeys after dark. Life was never identical for everyone. But among ordinary families living in villages and small towns, two-stage sleep appears to have been remarkably common. Then, slowly, everything changed. Cities grew larger, streetlights appeared, candles became cheaper. Later came gas lamps, then factories. Factory owners demanded workers arrive at the same time every morning. People stayed awake longer during the evenings. Artificial light tricked the body into believing the day had not yet ended. Finally, electricity transformed the night completely. Homes became brighter than ever before. Entertainment continued long after sunset. The quiet pause between the first and second sleep slowly disappeared from everyday life. Within only a few generations, people began expecting one long, uninterrupted sleep. Today, waking in the middle of the night often creates anxiety. People immediately check the time. They worry about insomnia. They stress about work the next morning. Ironically, someone living 700 years ago might have experienced that exact same moment very differently. Instead of panic, they might quietly whisper a prayer, warm the fire, check on the animals, share a few peaceful words with their family, or simply enjoy the rare silence that only exists beneath a sky filled with stars. Then, when their body was ready, they would calmly return to bed for their second sleep. The world around us has changed beyond recognition. Our homes are brighter, our nights are shorter, our schedules are stricter. But perhaps one small part of our ancient rhythm still remains hidden inside us. So the next time you wake up in the middle of the night, remember this. For countless generations, waking between two sleeps wasn't considered strange. It wasn't a problem waiting to be fixed. It was simply another quiet chapter in the rhythm of everyday life. And while history has forgotten many ordinary people who lived through the Middle Ages, their unusual way of sleeping may still be quietly living inside you today.